Today's job is continuing on with my 110 project. There's been a few changes and it was on hold for a little while whilst I was trying to get the registration sorted out. It was very technical and I'll probably tell you about it at the end of the project. But it was, I did put a V8 and an automatic transmission in out of a Disco 2 into a 110. If you follow some of the links, I'll put a link up here somewhere. And anyway, I changed my mind because the automatic was going to be a massive problem because of the wiring and also doing some sort of a cover that covered over the, you know, like where the gearbox is and the shifter. That was going to be like $1,200 just for that piece, and really this is a budget build. So I had this in the shed. It's an LT85 transmission. It's the 5-speed Santana gearbox, and this was in my V8 pickup originally. So I completely forgot about it, and I thought, oh yeah, a 4-litre V8 with a 5-speed on it, and especially with the big Santana on it, that's going to be even better. Anyway, so I dug it out of the shed yesterday and I stripped off the transfer case and look at this. The spline here is perfect. Now I did drive this around a little bit and it wasn't clunky or anything, but it was a bit notchy in second gear. So I'm looking at this, I'm just wondering whether somebody's rebuilt this at some point and didn't put the synchros in. So I've supported it on a chain block up here and I've drained the oil off. Well, some of it's gone on my bench, but what I'm going to do today, just for you guys, I'm going to strip this down and we're going to go by the book. Now I did this with the transmission, not the transmission, but the steering boxes, and it seemed to be quite popular. I got quite a lot of feedback over that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go by the book step by step so you can follow this. I haven't done one of these before, so this could be quite interesting. I've done hundreds of R380s, but not many of them, well, none of these at all. So let's put the camera on the stand and let's get on with it. One of the first things I'm going to do is take off the shifter, and we're going to keep this because these are like gold dust. This little shifter is completely different to an R380 one. If you can see, the angle's completely different and it's taller. If you put, so this kicks right back over the top of the transmission tunnel. If you were to put an R380 transmission shifter, a gear stick or whatever you want to call it, onto this gearbox, and the splines are exactly the same, what you will find is that this piece of the shifter will hit the fuse box. Quite embarrassing. So if you ever buy one of these boxes used, don't forget to get the shifter. I don't think they exist anymore. I suppose you could bend one and fabricate one. If anybody wants to fabricate one, that's what it should look like. I found the instructions and the workshop manual on a link from Ashcroft Transmissions. So a big thumbs up to David there for putting all that bit of work information up, because it's kind of interesting. These workshop manuals are quite difficult to find now. And on the first page it gives us some mounting dimensions for a mounting bracket, and this can be used on a cradle or a stand or whatever to get the transmission off. It is completely different to an R380 or an LT77. So I'm going to have to make one of those up shortly. That's in another video. So let's flip through this. These are all the special tools and pieces that you can make to strip the box. I'm going to make those. A mounting bracket to put this gearbox in, the vise, so we can assemble it correctly. Now I am going to make this one perhaps this morning, because it is 7 o'clock in the morning. When I get, when I get woke up a little bit. because it looks very difficult to put back together as it is. So stripping it down shouldn't be a problem. So first of all, what it's saying first of all is to take off the front cover, the bell housing, and take off this piece here. So that's what we're going to do. So with the bell housing off, I'm not going to put this one back on. This was converted to fit a 300 TDI. It's got a big chunk missing out of it where the starter nose goes. So I'm not going to put that one back on. So that's no problem. When I did take the top cover off here, this was full. Look at this. Look how full of sludge and rubbish that is. So that didn't go down too well. I thought something was going to go wrong. Look, but I got the cover off, and looking inside, there's no gasket on this. So things have now got me wondering what this is. It looks really nice and clean inside. It doesn't look like there's any damage at all, so things are looking good. Now, I just noticed something with this, that this is a split box LT85. The instructions that we're following are for the solid casing one, so maybe we're going to have to improvise on this as we go along. I've noticed that somebody might have been in this gearbox before. If we look at the bolts, some of them have got no spring washers on, and I always put the bolts back in the holes. If you're not really sure where they came from, put them back in. But we've got different types of bolts in here, and let me show you for an example. We've got things like this. Look, we've got a shouldered bolt here. This has got a plain shank on, and then we've got one that's a full threaded bolt. So I'm just wondering if somebody's been in this before. Like I say, the shaft is too good to be true. So there's one thing to look for. What we're going to find inside. The next thing is to take all these little detent springs off and put them in a box that's nice and safe. So then I'm going to go back to the instructions and look. I'm going to clean up the bench first because it's a right mess, and then we're going to see what we're going to do next. What it's saying next is to release, take out the balls, the detent balls in here. There's 4 of them. If you can see, let me see if we can see that a little bit clearly. Perhaps not. There's 4 balls in here. I haven't got a magnet that will go down inside there, so I'm just going to be careful when I take this apart. The next thing it's saying is take this spring off and take this. This is for the reverse. So we're going to take that off, and then there's a pin to punch out underneath. And I don't know if you can see these instructions here, but they actually got them in the wrong order. They're saying there's part 20 and there's part 21. And if you've ever not used to Land Rover workshop manuals, they're quite clever in some sort of respects. Because wherever it says 31, 22, 26, this is all to do with the little chapters that they've got on here, like the little paragraphs. So it's quite easy to follow if they put them in the right order. So I'm going to take that off, and then we'll see what the next stage is. A good set of various size punches are really handy to have when you're doing jobs like this. These are really cheap. These came from Prince's Auto, and they're not too bad from Prince's Auto because there's nothing to break, except the thin punches are really soft. But anyway, so that's just a little tip on punches. So you find a suitable punch and you punch the pin out, lift this lever off, lift it back, push the spring out of the way and push the pin down, but just do it gently because you want that to move. You don't want the pin to drop in the bottom of the box, otherwise you'll get it out later eventually, but it's better if you just push it through. And what it's saying now is we have to take off this clamp bolt here and then withdraw this shaft. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. think we might get a better view if I put this on the side a little bit. Yeah, should be able to see that now. So I unhooked the spring, I've knocked the pin out of here, but didn't knock it all the way through, so that's free to move. I've taken out the pinch bolt. You must take this out completely. And then what you've got to do is you've got to make sure that the selectors here are all in the same line. You can't have this, if it's fast forward or backwards, you won't be able to take this shaft out. Now what we've got to do now, I've put a pair of grips on the front just to pull the shaft. I'm not grabbing it from the middle, I'm pulling it forward, and we're going to release this shaft. Hopefully we'll be able to just tip this box over and get that ball out one at a time. I'm holding onto the spring so that doesn't drop into the bottom of the box, and then that's all out. Now again, because I haven't done one of these before, and even though I've got the instructions, I'm taking this out and I'm going to reassemble it back as it was, so I know that the spring goes in this position and everything goes back round the right way around. So that's another bit done, and then we'll have a look and see what else it requires. Now this is getting confusing, and this is why I'm doing it with you guys. According to instruction 23, we've done a 22 which says take out this pinch bolt and remove the shaft, and next it's saying on operation 23, which is down here, to take this clevis pin out that holds the 5th gear in. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm only on section 23 and it hasn't even told me to take the end cover off yet. So I think that's the next stage, to take this cover off so that we can get into here. You've got to make sure all the bolts are out. There's 2, 4, 6, 8 bolts hold this cover on, and I've got them over here, and I've got them in the order that they came out counterclockwise, starting at this hole here. I don't know if you can see that. So starting at this hole here, those bolts go counterclockwise. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this end cover off. We're going to give it a quick tap. If you're tapping things, don't hit them. Don't hit bolts, pant pieces that's quite important, because you could crack the casting. Just tap it on something that's not so important and just get it open a little bit. Now I'm going to use one of my favourite tools here. This is they're actually a cabinet maker's tool for working on wood, but they're hardened steel, and this one I use for cleaning up my chimney. I don't know if you can see that there. And I just cut the end off. I made a little chisel like this, very, very thin. Look at how super thin that is. But it's very hardened steel, probably made in China. And we can get that in there and just give that a bit of a tease. And you can see the water coming out. This must have been left outside. I don't know how it got water in. Very embarrassing, but here we go. Well, it's got a bit of water in it, but not too bad. But look at this. Never trust a second-hand gearbox. So that's bits off. We'll put that to one side. Now what is it looking for? Well, I think I'll turn the box over, because this is the 5th gear. We've got a little bit of corrosion on there, but look, you see, it's not too bad. It's only a little bit of water, so fortunately we caught that in time. So I'm going to flip this over. Well, now these little balls are dropping out everywhere. Just give it a quick tap down and see if they're not going to all come out. So I'm going to just move this out the way a bit and clean up, and then we'll get on to the next bit. The section that they were talking about in section 23 was to take this piece out here, and I've just zoomed in a little bit so we can see it a bit more clearly. There's a little split pin in there. We've got to take that out. And don't lose the washer, there's a washer under there. So we're going to take the pin out. I'm going to put the washer back on and then just put the pin through the hole. Don't just throw all these things in a big pile. So we put that into there, and the next thing we're going to do is look at the instructions again. So we've got that section out, and then we're going to see what we're going to do next. So the next instruction is to take this pin out of this 5th gear selector. You can see we've got 2 more balls to come out. Yeah, that's right, so we haven't lost anything there. So we're going to find a suitable punch. Let's have a go at that. And again, just feel for that coming out, because we don't want to lose the pin. There, you see? Just like that. So now it's saying we can withdraw. Oh, wait a minute. We've got to... Where have we got to put that? Oh, there we go. We just have to push it forward and get it out of the way. So I'm going to take that out, and then I'm going to reassemble it so you can see. So I've taken out the shaft, and I've put this selector on it in exactly the same place as it came out. So that goes into the box. The next thing it's asking to do is to remove this pinch bolt from here. There we go. So we take that out, and we have to turn the page now and see what it says here. Again, we have to, so we've got the pin out, so the selector rail's free. Next we've got to take this pin out of here. Now, one of the nicest things about these set of punches, I'll show you on a big one here. If you can see it's got a dimple on the end. So if you're knocking roll pins out or anything like this, it automatically self-aligns, and even the little ones here, well, they've got the little dimple on too, so it makes knocking roll pins out kind of easy, really. So let's... Ooh, this is going to be interesting. There we go. Knock it out, feel it, knock it out, keep, there. See, I felt that come out. So the next thing is to push this one out. And again, I'm just going to use a punch, just ever so lightly, to tap it out the way. See, you've got to keep everything in line, because otherwise they'll drop out. And again, we take this piece of the selector off here, turn it around, push it back through the hole, and lay it back in the box in an order it came out of. And next, probably, we have to do the same for this one here. I'm going to check just to make sure. So sure enough, we have to take that pin out. Not all the way, just make sure it's loose. A little bit more. There we go, that's loose. That selector bolt can go back in here so we don't lose it. And then we're going to have to take off this one off here. These are tight, but They're not too bad to do. We get that out. Now we should be able to push this forwards and take out that shaft. Just make sure that it's all going to come out. I'm not hitting that hard. Now you'll find that this piece comes out. We're going to put that in the box. We're going to keep pushing this forward. Those are a little bit tight on those selectors. So with a bit of pressure on this end, we're going to just ever so slightly tap them out. There we go. That's out the way. That's out the way. Get this selector out. I think there must be a little bit of a burr on the shaft. Let's see if we can tap that. Can't get my hammer in. There we go. Again, we take that out, pop it back on the shaft in the same way it came out. So we know which is which. Now let's have a look. Withdraw the forks. So that's that one out. And that's that one out. And again, I'm going to put the bolt back in before we lose it. Put those into order. So it looks like we're getting somewhere now, and we can see all those gears going round. I bet you the next thing is to take this end piece off. Let's have a look and see. What it's saying now is we've got to collect, there's all the balls that didn't come out of here, we've got to try and collect them. I'm just using a little angled pick and try and push them forwards if they're in there. Yeah, you see that? And a magnet. You see how easy they come out with a magnet, you see? Again, they go into that selection there. There should be one more in here. There, you see? Pick them up. And they're not on the floor. Now, what is important is between these selectors, there's a different type. You see there? These are your interlocks. These lock between the two shafts. You see? There's your selectors for your balls that's on the top, and these go in the side. Let's see if I can see that. These go in the side like this, so that if this gear shifts forward, it will lock the other ones, or the other shafts, from moving. They have to be, when it's in neutral, these little ball things here, whatever you want to call them, will go into the slots and allow these shafts to move. But once one shaft moves, it locks all the rest in. Really important, don't lose them. Let's keep looking. I'll just get my little magnet out there just in case we lose one. They are a bit tight. There's another one. Now, I can see here there's a plug. I'm just going to get a key, and I bet you there's another ball perhaps with a spring in here. Now let's see if we can see that, what I'm talking about. I'll turn the box up a bit. See here, there's a plug. Let's see. Keep saying see, and you can't see. There's a square plug here, and I'm going to take that off next, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a spring and another one of those. Well, that was interesting. We had the big ball come out, and we also had these little ones. So I think these little ones shift in between the shifters, and for some reason There's only one. Oh yeah, I see how it works now, look. So this pin sits in here, and that allows the pressure of the pins to be forced when you put those little rollers, so that the pressure here will allow it to go, will interlock, if you see what I mean. Quite a clever little idea, that, actually. Again, we'll put them in the box and keep them all safe. I'm going to put the plug back in the hole. The next thing it's asking to do, if you can see that, is to take off these two bolts here and withdraw this unit. But I think first of all I'm going to take this clip off. Whoops a daisy, you can see what you're looking at. There's a little spring clip on here, holds this ring on. So I'm going to take that spring clip off, and then we should be able to take this fifth gear out once I've got these bolts out of here. I've got the spring clip off. There we go, there's a little C-clip. Probably use that again. There's seems to be a spacer on there, and this piece won't come out because it seems to be, there's a bit of a burr on that shaft. So what I'm going to do is just lightly run a file over it whilst I'm turning it, and see if we can take that off without too much trouble. Well, it's coming off, it just wants a bit more. This is quite hard steel. I'm going to have to work on this a little bit longer, but I think I might just use a stone and just take that edge off here. So that collar was quite difficult to get off, and looking at it, I don't know if you can see that around here, there's a keyway in it, but there was no key, and this bit's been pretty bruised and ground up. So I've got a suspicion that this has been off before. So I'm going to put this back into the box in the same way it came in. This will polish up, we'll put that in a buffer and buff that out. We're going to take all these bits off and put them in a separate box, because this is the back of the gearbox. This has got a little hole in it, and this plate here is quite worn. Same at the back side. So it looks to me like there's been a key that's supposed to fit in there, but what's it supposed to do, I don't know. So we're going to take off that these two bolts here. So what I've done now is I'll just put this back on so you can see which way it went round together. I've taken the two bolts out of here, these two bolts, these 8mm bolts, taking them out, and I'm going to take off this selector fork. Now be careful, because these slippers can fall out, they're brass. We're going to do an inspection of all the parts later, but the main thing now is just to get them out. Put that in the box, put the bolts back in the holes. If you're not sure, put them back in the holes. Now you'll see now that that fork's off, everything will start to fall apart. And we can then slip that forward, take that gear off. Oh, everything's falling out now. There's the bearing. You see how important it is to keep everything together. Put them in a box. As I mentioned to you before, look, keep everything in boxes. These things here from the dollar shop for $1.30 or $1.50 are great, or $3. I can't remember, $3 maybe. Or you know, any parts box. But don't put all your bits in just one cardboard box, because you're going to have troubles, especially if you haven't put one of these together before. So we're getting now to the stage where we can almost split this gearbox, and it looks like, let me turn this over, I will turn it this way so you can see it. We've got to take this nut off here, take this big nut off. Yeah, and it looks like somebody's been in this before because they've made a real dog's dinner of taking that off. So I'm going to get that off, hopefully without too much damage. I hope I've got a socket that big. There's something I didn't expect. The next problem we have, because there's always problems, is to get the nut off the lay shaft here. What it suggests in the book is to lock the gears up. You lock, let me see if I can turn this round. You push this synchro this way towards the back of the gearbox and this synchro that way, and that will in fact lock up the gearbox. That will allow us to get the nut off relatively easy. And I say relatively easy because it turns out to be, what size is that? 1 5/8 inches is a snug fit. Good job, I've got a great big spanner like that. So I'm just going to struggle on now and see if I can get that nut off. I haven't got a socket to put on the impact, so I'm going to struggle a little bit. So I'm going to do that, and that's the next step. That nut was very difficult to get off. There's a little notch in the shaft where you're supposed to pin this over so it doesn't come off. But the problem was it was so tight, and somebody had put instead of hitting and crimping this nut over in the little notch, they'd done it to one side and damaged the thread. So I ended up using a Dremel. I mean, it's not very pretty, but it'll dress up nice. I'll run a die nut down that. But anyway, next thing is, oh, that came off easy. Was that? And then we can take off this end plate. And we have to take that off because that ties the two pieces of the gearboxes together. So that's the next step. We'll get those off. These two Allen-headed bolts here are extremely tight. In fact, I had to start them off with a chisel just to tap them loose because they were so tight that they wouldn't get started, and I didn't want to strip them off. It's easier to buy new bolts, but they're off now, so there we go. Same with the bottom one. Take that off. Now we can see that bearing falling out, and in the workshop manual they made a spacer to hold that on whilst you were taking this all apart, so that probably makes sense. Again, we're going to put that over there. We're going to put the bolts back in the holes again. Oh, well, all this lot is in here, it's terrible stuff. And put the bolts back in. And I think now it wouldn't surprise me if it's ready to strip the casings, because there is nothing else holding this together. So let me have a look at the book and see if we need to split the casings now. So I've taken off the casing bolts. There's 5 at the bottom, which are short ones, and then there's one big log one goes through the top. And the next thing I'm going to do is take off this front cover. It's not very tight. The air gun makes it life a little bit easier. Let's have a look at those. They're all the same length, so there's nothing to worry about there. It's always important when you're working with nuts and bolts and aluminium to get the the right bolts in the right holes, otherwise you can strip the threads. So there we go, we'll just prise that off. There's some dowels in there. Is there another bolt? No. There it is, on a dowel at the front. And we take that off, see what we've got in there. Again, there's not a gasket in this, everything's been done with the silicone sealer. That's something to watch for the future. So obviously this has been built. Front bearing's looking a little bit wibbly wobbly. Not too bad, there's no more bolts we can see. So I think it could be time to see if these casings are going to split. Let's have a tap. Nothing there. Anything else holding this together? It doesn't seem to be. See, they have used quite a lot of silicone on this. I'm going to just put a little spreader in here and see if I can spread that up apart a little bit. Actually, I turned the gearbox around and I found there was another bolt. So there's two bolts going in the top in a diagonal, two long bolts. They're the same. So let's get some of these things out of the way. Let's put these bolts in these holes at the front so we don't lose them. There we go, get rid of those. In fact, one won't go in because it's right on the split. There we go. So this now should tap apart. Hey, look at that. Now we've got a washer in there, stuck with silicone. That obviously came off the end of there. And there is our gearbox. Now the bearing at the other end is quite special, the bearing at this end. It's made out of two halves and you do need a spacer to hold this together because that's what happens. I've got that the wrong way around naturally. But the balls and the bearing will fall out. So I'm going to put that together and I'm going to look for a little spacer to put on there whilst I put that back together and take it out, should I say. To keep the bearings together in this piece, I simply just put the gear back on and put the nut on so the bearings don't flop around too much. I'm quite surprised how nice and tight all these bearings are. These are really nice. The lay shaft's good, there's no damage to that. A lot better built than an R380, a lot more chunky. I'm really pleased I'm going to use this box. I've got no real problems with these bearings. I just want to have a quick look and see. Yeah, this is the problem, the bits fall out, so you've got to be careful. It's always wise to get your floor nice and clean before you take anything like this apart. Yeah, they're going to be tricky, so I've got to just temporarily put that to one side. Seems make bearings, these are. No marks on them so far. Oh, wait a minute, there's a mark. Very difficult to read. I'm going to have to read those later. I'm going to change the synchro rings. All the synchros seem good so far. This is your fourth gear. That seems good. I'm going to pop that bearing back in here so we don't lose the bits and pieces. Let's see what this bearing is here. Yeah, no, that's a nice one. It feels nice. Can't see the marks on it. Must be on the other side. So we're going to continue and strip this down completely because I want to change the synchro rings in here because I've got loads of them. So I want to take all this lot apart. So I'm going to put some toys to one side and clean up the bench, and hopefully we might not need all that much for this gearbox. Might just need a set of synchro rings and a clean up. That would be good. Let's see what we can come up with. So I've taken the circlip off the end, and I always, as a matter of course, replace circlips because they do get stretched quite a lot. This synchro, don't want to take it apart if I can help it, so keep it together, keep your thumbs around it, and then just gradually ease it off the shaft like that. Alright, turn it upside down. There's a shim, a spacer in there too. Don't forget the spacer and snap ring. What I usually do when I'm taking the main shaft apart is put them all into order as they came out like that. So that looks good, and unlike an R380 you don't need any fancy tools. You probably need a tool to get this bearing off, but let's see. So again, going to put some circlip pliers on here and see if we can get this ring off. Probably not. Ow! Probably have to get the bigger pair out. Yeah, snap back on my finger. So we're going to use this ratchet set of pliers, circlip pliers, take it out and then back off the ratchet, take the clip off. Is the bearing going to slip off? Well, look at that. Looks like it is. A bit tight, it just wants a little bit of a pull. But it doesn't look like on this gearbox you need very many special tools at all. I'm going to take that bearing off. Yeah, it's all loose now. So I'm going to take that bearing off and I'm going to see what we can find. Well, that wasn't too bad. All I had to do was tap it a little bit. And off comes the bearing. Just having a look to see whose make it is. Oh, there's a shim there, look. We mustn't lose that shim. Ah. NWB. Well, isn't that interesting? Because I was told that these bearings aren't very good. And that's one in there. So we're going to keep that together. The next thing we're going to do is take the first gear off. If it will come off. Probably not. And we'll take that assembly off in one big piece. And that's going to be inspected. So far everything's looking hunky-dory. Yeah, this gearbox has been rebuilt. Now I'm just wondering, while I'm talking to you or talking to myself, whether this box has been rebuilt in the past and the oil in it was just way too thick. I wonder if that's its problem. I wonder if by running it on a lighter oil the synchros will be better. Well, what we're going to do is going to get the parts washer out, we're going to clean everything up, and then we're going to reassemble it again. So far, not a problem. I did have the opportunity to drive this gearbox, put it in the truck and drive it, and like I said, the only problem I had was second gear, and second gear is, like I say, oops, spacers, shims, you know, always take these things apart in the same order. There's your synchro, and this is your second gear, and no, wait a minute, that's your first gear, this is your second gear, that's right. Inspect all inside the synchro, see if there's any damage. That looks really good. Yeah, I'm really pleased with that. The synchro rings, this is on your first gear. One of the things you've got to watch out for is the space between these two, this set of teeth here and this one. If these are too tight together, I've caught my paper towel in there. If you get them too tight together, if that gap there is too tight, that's when you get grinding of gears, because there's nowhere for this to slow down. This is actually like almost like a brake. There's a taper in here, there's a taper in here, and what it allows to do when you're turning, this gear is spinning around like crazy, and it allows it just to stop so everything can get into a line. And when you hear you're shifting gears and you're grinding, that means that this isn't actually doing anything at all, it's too tight. So there's one thing to watch out for, but I'm really surprised. I mean, I think this has had a lot of work done on it in the past. The shaft's like new, so I've got nothing to worry about there. So I think it's going to be a clean-up, and we're going to reassemble this. Now that's going to be boring, so I'm not going to do the clean-up, but I'm unsure if this needs a gasket set or not. Somebody's put silicone on this before, and I'm not sure if it's gaskets. I've got to find out.